Awesome. Thank you everyone for being here. We have a very exciting panel today. I know the room's going to fill up a little bit more. So as and when more people come in, please do your best to accommodate them. My name is Neha Jolly Sani. I lead the digital innovation practice for public sector AWS in India. I have a very interesting panel here today. And before I have them introduce themselves, I just wanted to quickly talk you through what innovation is at AWS. It's the same mechanism that brings to life products like Alexa and Kindle to life. And we've been working with many of our public sector customers in trying to bring that practice to them, and we'll hear directly from them how that practice is either helping them achieve their business goals or helping them amplify the impact that they'd like to have. So I'll start with Mr. Ghosh. So I'd like you to quickly run through an introduction, please.
Myself, Ranjit Kumar Ghosh, General Manager, Coal India Limited. I am based out of Calcutta, Kolkata, I should say. Any more thing I have to?
That's fine. That's fine. We'll come to you, Ram.
Thanks, Neha. Hi, everyone. My name is Sriram Haridas. I am the Deputy Country Representative of UNFPA India Country Office, which is the United Nations Population Fund. I always joke that I look, and my name is more Indian than most Indians, but I'm from Sri Lanka. Been in India for 7 years. Before that, I've been also with the UN in different countries, Sierra Leone, Afghanistan, South Sudan, and now in India. Very happy to be part of this panel.
Thank you, Ram. Suresh.
Thank you, Neha. I'm Suresh Kadakbavi. I head the Innovation Lab at Bangalore International Airport. And that's one part of my role, which is that I also am part of the Technical Working Committee of Digi Yatra, which is a national biometric program for seamless, hassle-free passenger travel. And as a part of the Technical Working Committee, we have been leading this from almost, I would say, from 2017 onwards until now, where we are seeing this, coming to a logical conclusion with the app getting rolled out and stuff like that. I'll be speaking about that. And yeah, I have the license to, I would say, innovate.
Awesome. Thank you, Suresh. In fact, now that you've mentioned Digi Yatra, let's start with the idea behind Digi Yatra, the central ecosystem, and why we began to work on it. And of course, please talk us through the components that went into building this solution.
Right. So I think it was, it had a very humble sort of a beginning. Somewhere in 2015, we were like discussing about, how do you make the passenger journey memorable at the airport? And I was asked to write a story of the passenger journey. And the story that I wrote was that passenger just walks through every process. Nobody stops him or her, and passenger reaches the boarding gate and boards the flight. And this was like something which was also put to vote, and people were casting votes. It did not receive too many votes, but yeah, I still pursued. We went ahead with doing a proof of concept, and it was very successful. We did it with Aadhaar at that time, and subsequent to that, we got into the ministerial thing, which is went to the ministry, spoke to them, made them experience the whole ecosystem. On seeing the benefits, I think they were also game for it. They said that, why don't you write the national standard for Digi Yatra? And that's where the whole journey began of collaboration with all the airports. There was another company, a not-for-profit company, which was formed called Digi Yatra Foundation. And now this is completely headed by them. And we, as the Technical Working Committee members, are contributing to this cause of making passenger journey seamless. So when we started saying that, okay, let's have this ecosystem where we create a mini sort of an Aadhaar ecosystem, where we start to store passengers' profiles. And of course, we were almost on the verge of awarding the contract to one of the shortlisted bidders when pandemic hit us. And also, we began to think of, how can we be frugal in this whole thing? How can we be privacy preserving? How can we build in the fundamental tenets of privacy by design and privacy by default? And that's where we changed the whole ecosystem from a central repository to a totally decentralized economy, where the power rests with you as passengers, the data lies with you. You choose to share the data whenever it is required for any travel that you want. And I think this is empowering passengers, and this is what the whole Digi Yatra central ecosystem journey is. And of course, when we thought about this, we immediately got in touch with Niti Aayog and eventually with the AWS team, got them to run a startup challenge. And of course, promoting startups was one of the objectives that we had. So yes, we went ahead, did a startup challenge for startups across India. Finally, we have selected the startup and we have built the ecosystem now. And yeah, I mean, it's a very, I would say, beginning of the journey, and of course, another year or so, and we should be there setting a benchmark for the world to follow.
So very shortly, practically every airport in the country, you will be able to enjoy a contactless, just walk in and walk through to the to your airplane seat, pretty much with just one physical frisking. Is that the idea? Well, that's been a focus for some time, right?
So eventually that also will go away, and the vision that at least I have, and of course the technical working committee has, is totally barrier-less process across airports in India.
Right, right. But that's been a focus area. And so, Ram, speaking of focus areas, across 23, 27, United Nations is now getting into program action after you've identified some focus areas. So could you talk us through those focus areas, please?
Sure. Thanks, Neha. Friends, like I mentioned, I'm from UNFPA, which is the United Nations Population Fund. For those of who are not very familiar with UNFPA, we are the lead UN agency for delivering a world where every pregnancy is wanted, every childbirth is safe, and every young person's potential is fulfilled. We have offices in more than 150 countries, and in India, we have been operating since 1974, so it's almost going to be like 50 years. We have been supporting the government primarily to enhance sexual and reproductive health and rights, empowerment of young people, enhancing gender equality, and also strengthening data systems. For example, we are the lead UN agency providing support to the government in implementing census operations. You are right, Neha. We have just finalized our planning for the next 5 years. So in the next 5 years, we'll be focusing in 4 key priority focus states, which are Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, and Odisha, which all put together approximately account for 25% of India's population. But more importantly, they account for 31% of the most poorest districts. They account for 40% of maternal deaths, which are like, women dying while either they are pregnant or when they are giving birth. They account for 25% of unmet need for family planning. These are people who want to access contraceptions, but for some reason they're unable to do so. They also account for almost 27% of spousal violence experienced by women. So there's a reason why we are kind of focusing on these 4 states. In terms of our focus priority areas, again, mainly 4 focus areas. First one is working with the government to strengthen health systems so that they can provide comprehensive sexual and reproductive health services. This would also mean strengthening maternal health services. For example, we are providing support right now to Ministry of Health and Family Welfare to roll out midwifery as a profession in India. Unlike in many countries where midwives are at the forefront in delivering babies, in India that doesn't happen. Most of the deliveries are done by doctors, which is frankly not their best use of time. We also, under that thematic area, we also ensure enhancing contraception for young people, giving them more choice, especially with a focus on girls. The second major area is empowerment of young people, especially adolescents, and that too adolescent girls, also coming from marginalized populations like scheduled tribes. This includes institutionalizing what we call as life skills education, which is the 21st century skills which they need, which serves as a bridge between education and employment. So those are institutionalized in different school curricula, plus also working with the youth networks, youth-led organization to build their capacities so their leadership and their participation is enhanced. The third area for me, which is like the most important one, is gender and social norms. Now, having spent a few years in India, I'm convinced that if India were to achieve its development goals, the social norms, especially the low value of girls, need to change. This involves working with institutions and communities to kind of shift the social norms and also doing a lot of evidence to see like what works on the ground as well. The fourth area is the data, supporting the national government to strengthen collection, usage, analysis of data. So make sure that public policies and programs are actually evidence-driven. And more importantly, also what we call as population dynamics, since we are limited in time. Just to give you an example, India is a very young country, but the elderly population is an issue in southern states like Kerala and Tamil Nadu. So their needs should not be forgotten. So bringing these kind of nuances in policy analysis, plus also some of these mega trends like climate change, like urbanization, migration, making sure these are like taken into consideration in government policy making. So these are like the 4 areas. I still see some puzzle looks, so let me try to kind of simplify it. What this would mean in the next 5 years is, I mean, if we are successful, we would be able to avert over 23,000 maternal deaths in the next 5 years. We would be able to kind of create over 9 million people using family planning methods. Almost more than 200,000 child marriages could be prevented. Almost 6 million women otherwise who would have experienced spousal violence, that would be decreased. And for me, more importantly, 140,000 girls who would otherwise be missing at birth due to what we call as gender-biased sex selection. As many of you know, there is still a strong preference for boys over girls in the Indian society, unfortunately, so that is something we work at. But of course, these are like very ambitious targets, and we would not be able to achieve them on our own. And that's where we look towards partners. We partner with the national government here, state governments, legislators, other UN agencies, media, civil society, but more importantly, Neha, private sector. And that too, private sector and technology partners like AWS, whom we are really looking towards to bring us that technological innovations, which would actually help us to accelerate the progress so we could achieve the goals in the next 5 years.
Of course, thank you for that. I think it's very well said and great context, I think, very relatable to a number of us. And speaking of impact, Mr. Ghosh, Coal India is the largest coal producer in the world, and also perhaps one of the largest employers with over 272,000 employees. Can you walk us through how technology is helping Coal India make not just your lives, the lives of your employees better, but also bring in optimization and essentially solve some of your most critical problems?
Yeah, sure. You see, Coal India is not only the largest manufacturer or miner of coal, it is also the producer of cheapest coal in the world. If you see current market prices, international price of coal of around 3,000 kilocalorie is around $400. Whereas in India, we are producing it, say, $50 to $60 per ton of coal. So you cannot compare how cheaply we are producing coal in India, and during the recent war time, which in Ukraine, the demand of coal has risen to such an extent that the importers are not able to import coal for their own power plants. So in this kind of situation, Coal India is stressed to produce more coal. In this scenario, you see our production capacity cannot be increased unless we take help of some technological use cases. We are in the process of implementing latest technologies in field of operations of coal mining, and 7 of our mega mines, which are in state of UP and Chhattisgarh, they are being completely digitalized, right from drilling to you see the dispatch of coal. Again, if you see the number of accidents in 70s and 80s, there were fatal accidents to the tune of hundreds per year, but now it has come down to 20 or 25 per year, which is again not tolerable. Even a single fatal accident is not at all tolerable. So, for these things we need some more technological advances in our way of mining coal. The today's scenario of coal mining is in international scene. You can see there are autonomous vehicles which are running in the mines. In India, we cannot reach to that extent right now, but we are trying to optimize the operation of heavy earth moving vehicles in such a manner that its utilization is maximum, its availability becomes maximum, at the same time its operating cost becomes minimum. So, in this way we are trying to deploy the technological or digitalizational ways into our mining operations, and in a very near future we will be able to see Coal India and other mining sectors, for example bauxite or other minerals, they all will come together in such a fashion that this digital mining will become the fashion of mining, and we will be able to reduce the carbon footprint of produce by though it is very ironical that we are producing coal and also trying to reduce the carbon footprint, but yes, we are trying to do that through deploying many modern techniques. And one other thing is, we are also going to be the biggest player in solar energy also in India. We have definite plans in this direction. We have already in operation few big solar plants in Rajasthan. We are also in the process of acquiring lands for solar plants in Gujarat. So, by 2070, which our Prime Minister says is the last year of using coal, I hope that within 2070 we will become the largest non-conventional producer of energy, and let us hope that India will become the most carbon neutral country by 2070.
No, certainly I see a trend here, because I'm sure at Bangalore International, the focus is carbon neutrality, climate change, the focus is carbon neutrality. But I do think autonomous vehicles at the airport would be quite a sight to see, Suresh. Yes, we should certainly explore that. But coming back to, and I do want to spend a little bit more time on Digi Yatra. What do you see as the roadmap now that we've put it out there for passengers to use, and we've gotten a lot of great feedback? What is the roadmap for Digi Yatra, and how do you see it having a global impact?
So earlier in the day, Rahul was mentioning, Max was also mentioning, right? I mean, India has that unique opportunity to offer scale, right? And test solutions for scale. And I think we are at a position where we can set the benchmark to the world, having deployed a solution which actually works. And I think from a roadmap perspective, what we are thinking is we start off with domestic travel now, and that does not involve a process called as immigration or emigration. But eventually, I think you all must have experienced the fact that whenever you travel to any international destination, you have to spend like at least 45 minutes to maybe an hour and a half in the immigration queue. And our eventual goal is to also include that portion into the whole Digi Yatra journey, so that you can have a seamless experience, and your waiting time at immigrations becomes maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And not just that, even for arriving passengers who arrive from an international destination, it's the same thing, where again you spend, you've flown around 9-10 hours, and then from the tube you stand in the immigration queue, and it's like a harrowing experience for all passengers. So I think that is another aspect that we are trying to focus on. We start with domestic, and then we will eventually also cover the international processing part.
Right, and just for the sake of our audience, what kinds of organizations internationally would we be perhaps interacting with or touching base with to make this an international offering?
So we are already in connect with IATA, which is the airlines body. So with IATA we have been very closely working, and IATA is looking at Digi Yatra as an example of how it can be done at scale, right? So that's something which we are already in touch with them. But coming back to the future roadmap, a couple of other things which I have been thinking is, for example, there is identity validation which is required at multiple locations. So you check into a hotel, and I'm sure when you checked into this conference also, you had to show your identity card. And now imagine, why do you really need to carry your identity card, right? I mean, you have your own face, which is perhaps, your identity, right? So the intent here is that Digi Yatra can become the platform for identity for travel, tourism, transportation industry. And when you check into the hotel, all that you do is you would have shared your credentials, and the hotel knows already who you are. Your identity is verified as soon as you come with your face, and that's it. I mean, you have a seamless process across. And even in metros, for example, it's a pain also. So many other, I would say, instances of use of Digi Yatra can be thought of, and I think that's going to bring convenience to all passengers, or all people, I would say.
Right, so it's a question of replicating and integrating to increase the impact.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's wonderful. Sriram, I'll come to you. I think you pushed out some very powerful statistics, and you talked about the 4 implementation states. Can you help us understand how specifically, via these implementation states, what kinds of technologies are you experimenting with? How do you see sort of replicating some of these use cases across the country, starting with these 4 states?
Sure. Thanks, Neha. You would agree with me that the world is changing, and quite rapidly. And it's the same for India as well. The India, say 50 years ago when we started operations, or even say 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, is not the same India we are living right now. So if we want to kind of achieve the goals I outlined in my previous answer, we have to innovate. There's no other way around it. And at UNFPA, I also sometimes joke saying that things are very slow to change in the UN system. Sometimes people say, oh, the government is bureaucratic, you have to come to the UN and see how bureaucratic sometimes the UN can be. But it's not all doom and gloom changes coming. That I can vouch, at least from UNFPA side. We have come to the realization that we need to innovate, and we need to make use of our technological partners if we want to achieve what we call as the 3 transformative goals that we are trying to achieve by 2030. 0 unmet need for family planning, 0 preventable maternal death, 0 gender-based violence and harmful practices. I'm sure everyone here would have also heard about the Global Sustainable Development Goals, which are the 17 goals all the countries have agreed to achieve by 2030. And even if you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, innovation and technology are listed as a key accelerator. So there is, across the UN system, there is a realization that we need to innovate and make use of technology if we want to achieve the goals. So what does that mean for us? How do we operate? And this is where we look towards partners like AWS. But even before looking towards them, I'll come to that in a minute, we ourselves have started looking what we can do internally first. And I'm very happy to note that UNFPA India is one of the very first UNFPA country officers to establish an innovation unit last year. So we have done that, which is great. And as part of that, we are also trying to establish what we call as innovation labs, which we hope will help us to ideate, design, and implement some of these innovative solutions. So that is something that we are doing internally. But like I mentioned, we will not be able to do all that by ourselves. So of course, we look towards partners. And I'll try to give you some concrete examples as to how we have tried to kind of operationalize that in the states that we work with. You take Bihar, for example. We have a very innovative program which is happening there. That is, I briefly talked about the 21st century life skills that we are trying to integrate into the different school curricula. What we are trying to do in Bihar, or what we are doing in Bihar, is that we are integrating that into the madrasa education system. And we do that with the Bihar government. It's entirely supported by the Bihar government, the Minority Welfare Department. So it's fully government owned. It's across the state, all 38 districts. And we are partnering with AWS in this project to kind of the platform where all the outcomes of this project will be mapped. And that's being hosted by AWS Cloud. And increasingly, we have already had some inquiries, say, from West Bengal and Telangana, that they want to kind of replicate this project, seeing the success. So there is also like that opportunity to kind of scale it up across other states as well. Another example I could give you is, I told you that we are supporting the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare in operationalizing the midwifery initiative. One thing which we are trying to do is create a virtual reality lab, which will be first of its kind in India, where in addition to the classroom theoretical classes and practices, midwives will be also, these labs will help to build their capacity in the management of critical cases, using the VR technology. So that's another concrete way that we are also helping. If I can also give you another example, and then I have a request to all the participants as well. In fact, yesterday, we launched a hackathon. Inviting ideas, suggestions to see how we can address the issue of gender-based violence. So this hackathon has been published. If you go to UNFPA India website or just search for our social media platforms, you will have details of that. We are hoping that we will be able to get some innovative ideas on how to address gender-based violence, and AWS is one of our knowledge partners in this initiative. Similarly, we have another innovative program in Odisha, where we are partnering with the Odisha government, trying to reach out to 600,000 women, trying to build their capacities on financial literacy, digital literacy, telling them about their rights, sexual reproductive health and rights, about gender, social norms. Again, we are looking towards technological partner to see how best we could reach these women. Another example, which is we are in discussion with the Madhya Pradesh state, where the Madhya Pradesh government has actually requested us to come up with a platform where it will be one platform where young people, especially adolescents, 10 to 19 years old, can access the correct, right information. Because, as we all know, there is an information gap. And very often, young people don't know where to go and get this information. And this is something we are in discussion with the Madhya Pradesh government and trying to kind of roll out. And this is another project which we see that, there is a huge potential for scale up. For example, I was in Rajasthan recently. When they heard about this request from Madhya Pradesh, they had already made a request saying, please try to see how you can extend it to Rajasthan as well. Right. So these are some of those kind of projects which I just wanted to kind of touch base. We are working with AWS and other partners, which I see a huge potential. But I also see the partnership between AWS and UNFPA, right. Us complementing each other. Right. For example, we have been operating here in India for almost 50 years, helping to roll out government programs, identifying implementation bottlenecks, trying to solve them. We look at things through a gender and human rights lens. We bring global best practices from other countries, right. And then we would really like to leverage AWS global expertise,
Absolutely.
Your experience, the technology and innovation ideas that you bring about, so that instead of doing few innovative projects here and there, which have limited impact, the idea is that innovation will be mainstream, and that we would come up with really scalable innovation projects, but also approaches that will cut across all our programs and all our
right.
all our states as well.
Of course, you're building those innovation mechanisms. Absolutely. In fact, much like the gender-based violence hackathon that we have going on with UNFPA, with Coal India, Mr. Ghosh, we've recently launched an innovation challenge. And I think it's important that this audience hear about what that innovation challenge is about and how you're using sort of frontier technology to solve some of your operational challenges.
We are carrying out a hackathon with help of AWS regarding video analytics of some of our very significant and important concerns. Those concerns include safety, which is our first priority, and to prevent the pilferage of coal. You see, pilferage of coal, as you must have heard recently in Asansol region, there is a huge commotion about this kind of raids by ED and all for pilferage of coal. Thousands of tons of coal are being carried out illegally on daily basis. Those are not our mines, those are abandoned mines, you see. But in our mines also, the coal pilferage is a regular thing, and those are being carried out with connivance with some of our maybe own or some employees or you say state administration and all. So we took up this challenge of video analytics, where we will be able to exactly know at what time this pilferage is taking place and by what means. There are many instances of unauthorized trucks getting into our mining area, though we have all covered with laser walls and all, but there still remains 2 or 3 vulnerable points from where these trucks may enter, load the coal and get away. So this challenge has been well taken by very good and established players. 13 or 14 of them has already participated in that challenge. And let us hope that with help of AWS, who have very gracefully provided their platform for developing such a solution to all the participants, they have provided free of cost. We hope that we will get a solution which will not only help Coal India, but it will help the entire nation, because this kind of pilferage activities are taking place everywhere in all kinds of mines or factories. And as per our research, there is no ready-made solution available in the market. You see, you have to identify each and every truck through its features, not only number plate, because number plate can easily be changed. So by identifying the features of the truck and by counting the number of entries and exits from the designated gates of the mine, you can easily reduce the number of theft attempts. The other thing which I would like to highlight here is that through video analytics, we will also be able to ensure the safety of coal workers. I am not sure how many of you have seen coal mines.
Very few, I suspect. Show of hands, please.
Yeah.
Okay, wow.
Oh,
There's still a lot more than I expected.
Very surprised, and I am very happy that so many people have visited coal mines. So both underground and open cast mines, you see, underground mines are very dark, no proper lighting, very risky conditions. Our miners are working very hard in those underground and open cast mines. Though we are enjoying such a well-lit place in a air-conditioned atmosphere, but please appreciate that for this behind the scene, how our workers are working in a life-threatening conditions. So, for them, it will be very important to deploy some technology where their safety will be kind of ensured. So, we can have very high sensitive IoT devices which can sense the stability of, say, heap of coal or heap of overburden, the soil over the coal, it's called overburden. So, those accidents can be prevented through those sensors and with video analytics at the same time. In underground mines, roof fall is the most frequent cause of accident, roof fall. So, suddenly some stretch of roof falls over the workers and whoever are there get trapped and killed. So, whether we can deploy some analytics, video analytics over there. So, I hope AWS and other CSPs in India who are very strong in this. I know AWS has got a very good innovation center there. So, with their help, I am sure that in few months
time,
or
yes.
we'll be able to solve the problem and have a very good product which will surely help Coal India and other organizations of India who are working in similar conditions.
Certainly. Thank you for sharing that, sir. And before I open it up for questions from the audience, and of course, these amazing panelists will be here if you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation with them. I think the key takeaway here is that with an innovative mindset, it doesn't matter if you're trying to save lives, if you're safely trying to bring lives into the world, or if it's a question of enabling lives for a better quality of life. The mindset just needs to keep thinking innovatively. So with that, I will open it up for questions. We are represented by the United Nations Population Fund, Coal India, and the Innovation Hub at Bangalore International. So if you'd like to ask any questions, please feel free to raise your hands. Yes, can we get a mic over to him, please? Could you raise your hand again, please? I don't think he's seen you. Thank you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi. It's working.
Am
can
I
hear you.
audible?
Yes.
Yeah. It's my question to Mr. Sriram regarding VR, virtual reality. You said with Ministry of Health you are planning to, give a real practice, real experience to the citizen. So can you just tell more about this?
Sure. Should I? Yeah. Please. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. So like I said, we are in the process of establishing what we call as the National Midwifery Training Institutes. I think there's going to be a number of them like around the country. So I think so far only one has been operationalized. UNFPA is supporting the government to operationalize 2 centers, one in Udaipur and another one in Patiala. So those are the centers which have been assigned to UNFPA by the government. So what we are trying to do is, because this is a new concept for India, so far it has not been tried. So again, it required a lot of approvals from Ministry of Health, both from the state government and also from the national government. So this will actually, one thing I wanted to make it clear is, this is not going to replace the regular curriculum or the regular training that they have to undergo. That will be still there. This will be just on top of that, which will provide them some additional hands-on type experience. So what we are also trying to do is that we are in the process of doing a baseline, so that this will be actually a pilot project that we are trying to do in Patiala and in Udaipur to see how success is it, like has it actually compared to the other centers where the VR, these virtual reality centers will not be established, has it really helped to increase the knowledge of the midwives? So I think that is when, that's what will actually tell us whether the project has been success or not. So we are now in the process of identifying partners and kind of setting it up. I'm hoping that this will be, I'm looking at my team saying that it will be like operationalized maybe in the next 2 to 3 months. That's what we are aiming. So, and then we will kind of run it for like next 6 months. Also compare it with other national training institutes where these centers won't be established to see, we are confident. Also we have looked at few other countries where the VR labs have been established, and it seems the midwives who have kind of been trained through this, there has been an increase in knowledge. So we are really hopeful that this will be a game changer in India.
Awesome. Yes, please, could we get a microphone over to him, please? Thank you.
I have a small question for all three of you. Let me start with Coal India. The first, many of the mines' location are in relatively remote or I may not say remote, but hinterland areas. Now, we know that the quality of bandwidth is not standardized across the country. So some of these innovations that you mentioned will be bandwidth dependent. So how are you ensuring, especially in this hinterland, that there is no bandwidth issue? That is the question for Coal India. For UNFPA, my question would be, you mentioned, again, India is a very diverse country, and our cultural heterogeneity is it's widely disparate. So now some of the best practice, you are giving examples that the project you started in Bihar, Bengal wants to emulate, the project in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan wants to emulate. Now, when that cultural diversity and disparity is wide, and maybe in some cases it's more diverse than whole of Europe itself, so how are you able to replicate the best practices across states? It's not, India cannot be just homogeneously, the best practices can be followed. That's and for Bangalore International Airport, my question is, this Digi Yatra, how are you looking at monetizing the project in terms of, as a result of the deployment, can you indicate that's the delta in revenues that will get added for BIL? Or so how are you looking at, what are the matrices that you are looking for monetizing the project? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. Mr. Ghosh, please.
Yeah, you are right that we are facing bandwidth issues in our remote mines. But you see, we are exploring different routes of implementing NAS systems, network as a service. There are a lot of providers there who are showing interest, and we are doing POC with them. And as you know that the launching of 5G is very near. So we are already in talks with Jio and Airtel, and within say next 25 to 30 days we will be starting our first POC of 5G. They are already submitted a proposal to us for doing a test bed, creating a test bed kind of thing in a mine. So no, I cannot.
The question is which mine, if you are...
Yeah, we have identified Kusmunda and Gewra mine of ACCL, Southeastern Coalfield Limited. It is in Chhattisgarh. So we will be doing a POC for 5G there. Probably it will be a very big test bed they will be creating. We will also use some other use cases of 5G there at the same time. So this is how we are going to address this problem of bandwidth, because video analytics kind of thing will require a very high bandwidth. You are very right, and your question is very relevant. So let us hope that Jio and Airtel will give us some solution.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. Ram?
Thank you.
Thanks for that question. Coming from a small island nation, I always say that India is not a country; it's a continent disguised as a country. For me, and you're absolutely right. It's completely diverse. I say Kerala has more things common with Sri Lanka than, say, for example, in some of the northern states. I would say It's so diverse. And for us, it's all about adapting to the local context. We do bring in international best practices, but then when we bring it to India, and also depending on the location, we contextualize. But of course, that doesn't mean that we compromise on the quality and the international human rights standards. So for us, those are non-negotiable. But then there are other things we can kind of contextualize to adapt to the local context. I'll give you a very solid example. During COVID, we and together with other UN agencies, had supported Ministry of Health in coming out with communication materials, COVID appropriate behaviors. In some of the northern states, we did engage some of the Bollywood stars, to pass on that message. But of course, when we moved into southern state, as bigger stars they are in the north, their appeal in the south is not that much. So we had to kind of identify some of those local celebrities, who would appeal to those local populations. So this applies to any of the projects. We do look at the local context. In the 4 states, we do have officers as well, so staff who would kind of tell us, what works best in that particular state, and then we try and adapt our strategies and activities accordingly.
Perfect. Thank you, Ram. Suresh.
Yeah, so this question about monetization, I think interesting question, yes. But the whole program is run by a not-for-profit organization called as Digi Yatra Foundation. So intent is obviously not to monetize on the data. Second is the opportunities that we will get to make revenues, for example, from travel and tourism industry will be used to offset the cost of operations for the passenger. So in that way, the cost of operations is taken care of, and then we will not be levying a charge on the passenger for running this whole ecosystem. So that's the way we are going to do it.
Right, that brings us to the end of our panel. Thank you all for your questions, and thank you for being here. Thank you to the panelists for such honest and candid answers. Our panelists will be here for another 5 minutes if you'd like to have a one-on-one conversation. We hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. Thank you for coming.